Guten Tag from Herr Germany.
Happy next month after the last month. No, it's not that. It's still it's the first. It's
No,
the
it's the
first of
first.
March today.
It is the first.
Look at that.
'Tis the Ides of March.
'Tis the Ides of March. I was going to say Happy Black History Month, but it's
That
not Black
was
History Month anymore.
that was last month. Yep.
All that history.
Crazy, man. In 2 weeks, the Ides of March will have taken place a long time ago.
Don't the Ides of March take place every single March?
Well, as in like it does, but like as in thousands. Well, not thousands. But, I mean, almost thousands.
Hmm?
But that's when
I know.
Julius Caesar was killed. But it
Yeah,
took
I'm a
place March
history buff as
15th.
well, okay, man? You trying to flex on the
March
audience? Acting like you know
15th.
stuff? You don't know things. You don't know things. I know things.
What day did it take place?
The Ides of March.
But what day?
March 5th. You just said March 15th like
There you
three
go.
times.
Just making sure you're listening.
I was like, is this...
Kicker
he
is,
really
would you have known that before I said it, though?
Yeah, the Ides of March. Everyone
As in
knows
what
that.
day it took place?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yeah, wasn't Ides like another like thing for like half?
You tell me.
You don't know.
You tell me, history buff.
I'm saying I would have known. I would have already told you it was the 15th. But
Okay.
I'm saying, does either of us know whether or not the Ides of March... What does the Ides of March mean? Let's look this up right now. What are the Ides? I'm going to guess the middle. Or the turning point.
It is the midpoint of the month. There you go.
History buff status reinstated.
Why didn't you say it then? With confidence. With confidence.
You know what I have been listening to, though? There's this podcast. I've told you about it before, but you probably weren't listening, and you probably like found out about it later and then told someone else as if you were the first one to find it.
The history one?
Yes, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History.
Yep.
I was recently listening to one about Alexander and Philip II, who was his dad, and like the transition. It was about Philip's life first, and then the transition of power from Philip to Alexander, and then Alexander, and it was it's crazy, man. Like everyone, I wouldn't say everyone thinks, but Alexander, in his first few years of being the king of Macedonia, was really put in some really curious places in terms of just, you really didn't know whether or not he was going to make it out of there. And the fact that he did make it out of there multiple times in a row added to his legendary status. And my gosh, man, his life was crazy. And I'd have to say the coolest part of Alexander's life was when he dunked on his dad. Him and his dad, because kings and their sons are, they know one of them's going to be a king soon, and the old king doesn't want to give up power. And Alexander was, in that time they had multiple wives, so I'm pretty sure he wasn't, if I remember correctly, he wasn't the only wife to have had a son. So
he wasn't the only wife to have had a son?
Yes, because it was transgenderism was a big thing back then.
Nice.
But his wife, I believe her name, I think it wasn't Cleopatra, because that was a common name back then, and he actually incestually married.
That was Mark Antony.
Another one.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that in his lineage as well, he married a Cleopatra, and Cleopatra was a very common name back then. But they were arguing one night at a dinner party, like, just a bunch of really rich foreign old people sitting around back thousands of years ago. And they got in a little pissing match. And I'm pretty sure Philip II called Alexander a bastard, in terms of like, you're not even a legitimate son, just to like really get under his skin. Or Alexander said that to him. And Philip got up, drew his sword, and went over to go at Alexander, and fell over drunk onto the floor. And not only that, he had been in like a lot of different war campaigns, and he was just like Alexander, where he would lead the battle, in terms of lead the troops into the battle, and wasn't like hiding behind everyone. So he had a lot of physical, holdbacks by the time he was that age. and he fell over drunk on the floor with his sword. And Alexander goes, "Look, the king who's crossing into Asia can't even make his way from one couch to another."
Ouch.
And it was just like that was like
Ouch.
the start of the downfall for Philip. Wait,
That
Philip ended up getting killed by a gay lover.
no kidding.
Yeah, it was very common back then for kings to not only have multiple lovers, but like multiple lovers that were of both genders.
Yep.
And essentially, there was a someone made two gay lovers really jealous of one another, and they essentially pushed one of them to get really mad, and at another thing, he just ran up and stabbed Philip in the heart,
Nice.
and it was
That's a true, just kind of like Romeo and Juliet situation, you know? That is
yeah,
that's just so romantic.
it was
Oh
it's
my
really
gosh,
great, but
dude.
then you're just like you listen to those parts and you're just like,
You're
man,
gay.
you're gay. All that manliness with
All that
another man.
testosterone coming out.
It's like, hey, to live your life your own way, to each their own, but I mean, like, it really takes away from the big kingship type of thing if
Yeah.
you're messing around with little
Well,
stable boys.
that's what was crazy, man, especially I mean, in that time from Macedonia to the Greeks, um, and the Spartans especially, and the Romans, how everyone kind of in that sphere of the world had their male lovers. Like that was just a normal part of culture. It's just like we have wives and we can reproduce, but where the fun is with another dude.
Hey,
And you're
babe, I
just
want you
like,
to meet Mauritius. This is my boyfriend.
we fight well together in battle, but also on the side have some extracurriculars going on.
Mauritius gets me ready for no, Mauritius gets me ready for every battle.
He is my armor bearer. I was about to make another joke, but I'm not going to.
He bears other things as well, but mostly my armor.
That's what I was thinking.
Sometimes I am the bear and he's the cub.
Ah, that is so disgusting, dude. But going back to Alexander the Great's wives, we have Roxana, Statiera the second.
Alexander's wives?
Yeah,
He hasn't talked too much about them. He's more talking about
his gay lovers.
his no Alexander. It was Philip who had all the gay lovers.
I'm pretty
Alexander
sure
possibly
Alexander
did as
did
well. He
too.
probably did because I mean it's if you grow up like that, you think it's normal
It's cultural.
and yeah, cultural. And he was more talking about his like transition to being a king and how everyone thought he was just like a little kid and they were essentially going to take him over and he's not going to
Yep.
be a problem. And then he started wrecking shop on everyone, including when he took down Thebes, which is like Thebes would be like losing Dallas or
Yeah.
like losing New York because it was just a city that no one thought could fail. And my gosh, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just claiming vast territories, like kind of like I mean, not comparing him to a Genghis Khan in a way, but Genghis Khan in a sense of how much territory he truly conquered. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you're talking, Egypt, parts of Egypt, Mesopotamia, that central part, Central Asia, modern day Turkey. I mean, it's insane to think, man. Like, yeah, you had a vast army and vast resources and an empire to go out and do this stuff, but think of like around the time that he existed, that he was able to do all of that with, at this point, archaic means.
Yeah, man. They really moved at a different pace back then. And the crazy thing was, man, like, you know, the armies were not as big as movies like to make them. Like, his army was like 40,000 men, you know, and that was a big army back then. And that's what he was going to take Persia with. That's what he took Thebes with. And it's just like, it makes me think of like money in a bank account where it's like everyone that you see go away. It's not coming back.
Yeah.
Like that's 26 years or so of a person that was trained all those years and had so many resources put into them and was a valuable fighter just to be like accidentally nicked in the neck in the wrong place in battle and just like bleed out. And it's just, yeah, man, to be able to do that, but not only do that, but to be able to keep control of the areas that you conquered. Because think about it,
Yep.
when you left, you were gone for like a year until they ever saw you again. You know, it was one of those things where it's like, okay, we just got conquered and they're gone now. And it's like, it could be years before they're back and you're technically under their control, but it's like the whole army's with them for the most part,
Yep.
you know? So it's more of just, I guess, really what it was taking away someone else's army. So, and no matter what, when you came back, they wouldn't be able to defend themselves anyway. So they were under your control.
Yeah. Man, that is just wild. And to know, like, when he ascended to the throne or became king, um, was like age 20 from what I'm seeing here. But then he died at 32 years old. So by the time he took the throne at 20 and dying at 32, think of how active that 12-year span was to truly go out and conquer all those different regions of the world, maintain control, establish his dominance, spread, Greek culture, Hellenization, to do all that in a 12-year span. I mean, that's impressive. You're talking about like you are constantly on the go.
Yeah. I mean, but it's crazy to think it's only 12 years.
Yeah.
Like, but then
He's
again, 12 years back then was like, you didn't know if you were going to live for the next 10 years. Like, it was common
right.
for people to die in their 30s at that point.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I mean, just being able to, and he was just constantly campaigning, constantly, constantly, constantly. And at the end of the day, awesome, but you didn't even get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And really, all they were trying to do was write their name in history, which
Yep.
is crazy. Because have you ever seen, I doubt you have, and I don't remember why I watched it. I think I was dating someone at the time who made me watch it. It's called Coco. It's a Disney movie.
Heard of it. Yeah. Never watched it.
So essentially, the it's based on more of Hispanic and Mexican. I wouldn't say
Culture.
folklore, but yeah,
Yeah.
culture in terms of like what happens after you die.
Yeah.
And essentially, when you die, if your spirit stays alive or it stops, withering away, the more people say your name.
Huh.
So, or the more people bring up your name. And the whole point of the movie is like, there was a guy who stole this song and became a really famous songwriter, but he had done it illegitimately. And, the other guy who deserves the credit ends up getting the credit at the end. And, his spirit is rejuvenated because everyone's like, it was this guy. And everyone starts saying his name. And the guy who stole everything and everyone thought was a legend, starts to wither away. And that's essentially what they were trying to do, is make sure that their name reverberates throughout history for as long as possible. But look, it worked. We're still sitting here talking about Alexander the Great. And,
Yeah.
Egyptians would do this too. Egyptians would go into the temples of other pharaohs and they would have people scratch out their names, essentially doing graffiti, and replace their name in the hieroglyphics with that specific pharaoh. And it was essentially a way to try to erase another pharaoh from history and instill your name further into history.
That is wild. It's
And
like,
it's worked.
oh yeah, 100%. Well, and it kind of makes me think, I mean, just from a historical context or even mythology, like the Trojan War. Um,
That's not mythology.
no, I'm saying like in a sense of Achilles,
Yeah.
Achilles folklore and all that
Alexander was
stuff.
apparently descended from Achilles, is what part of his lore was.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd be curious, and I'll get into my point here in a second, but like, the lore behind Achilles, he's almost not like a full demigod in a way, but he was born to a king, but his mom was a sea nymph. So there's kind of like a mythological sense of, yes, Achilles is human, but his mom being a sea nymph was more mythical in a sense. But I'd be curious, like, if, we found the city of Troy and
Is
we
that
can't,
is that the story? Is that what it was? Are you looking at it right now?
what, that Achilles
Because
was,
I thought Achilles was like the son of a demigod, or
no,
that it
that was
wasn't.
Perseus was.
So it says Achilles was he
Yeah,
just
he
had
was
some he,
so
he had that nymph in him.
born to Peleus, immortal king of the Myrmidons, which Achilles then ended up leading into Troy. You know, like his squad of dudes were the Myrmidons. And then Thetis, who was a sea nymph, was his mom. And Achilles,
Thetis.
it was interesting in a sense of like Achilles was presented these two paths, right? He could either have long life and live it obscurely, not important, kind of like, meh, I'll live a long time, but I won't do anything. Or he could die young, but in a glorious fashion in which his name would be fastened to the times of history, you know, that would last through the ages. So that's
And
where he ended up going to Troy to fight with the Myrmidons, ended up getting shot in the Achilles, as we all know, by Paris. But he went down in history as, you know, the guy, one of the greatest
that's
warriors of that time.
that's the line that he says in Troy where he's going to battle, and that little boy says something to him, and he goes, "That's why no one will remember your name." And
Yep.
he's just like, "Wow, he's just a kid."
Yeah. A little bit more of an abrasive culture back then. Do
Yeah,
something with your life. You're
you're
5 years old.
12. Right?
Go
Get
to
out there
war.
and work.
But it's yeah, dude, it's interesting just all the major historical figures looking back throughout thousands of years, how they all did something to solidify their name that would literally live throughout history
I mean,
that
look
we're
at
still
Hitler.
talking about today. Oh, I mean, yeah, in a more recent past, there's that. I mean, Stalin, Mussolini, those guys were psychos.
Yeah, man. Not instilling their name in history for anything great,
No.
without a doubt.
But all that to say, really quick to wrap that point up regarding Achilles. Yes, there is the mythological context around Achilles with his mom being a quote sea nymph. But at the same time, I wonder if there was an actual human who was just this legendary warrior who did fight at Troy, who was exactly replicating an Achilles. His name might have been Achilles, but like obviously his mom wasn't a sea nymph,
I
you
think there
know?
was. Well, I mean, I'm saying that based off of nothing. I can't really say that with confidence. I haven't really studied up on it in a way that I can say that the legendary Achilles was most likely a real person. But I did watch something a year or two ago. I remember where they've always, you know, contended whether or not Troy was fiction or, you know, an actual real thing that happened. And they actually found the city where they believe Troy was and the gate. So they think Troy now was a real battle, or the you
Yep.
know the sacking of Troy. And if that's real, then at least some of the lore leading back to Achilles would be, you know, would have to have some sort of factual basis.
Yep. Well, and on that note, I'm looking this up. Archaeologists identify Troy with Hisarlik, a mound in Turkey excavated by Heinrich Schliemann in the 1870s and later by others. The site reveals multiple layers labeled Troy 1 through Troy 9, spanning from around 3000 BC to 500 AD. Wow, dude. Troy 6 or Troy Via are the leading candidates for the Homeric city, showing signs of wealth, strong walls, and possible destruction by fire, consistent with a war. Evidence includes pottery, bronze, weapons, and Hittite records mentioning a place called Wilusa, possibly Ilion. So Troy was known as Ilion, I believe, in local language or local context. So that city that they supposedly found, Wilusa, was possibly Ilion, though no definitive proof of the Trojan War actually exists. So it's like they're floating around it, but they can't fully confirm if it was.
Yeah. You know what they did confirm though that I think is one of the coolest things in the world? The
What?
city where David fought Goliath. Look that
Mm,
up real quick. They found the actual city because the remains of the city had two very specific gates, and another factor that no other city in the Bible or no other city at the time had those descriptive factors. But go on.
it wasn't an actual city. It was in a valley. Like according to biblical or to Bible context for Samuel 17, it was the Valley of Elah, E L
But
A
the
H.
city they were defending was what? I'll look it up as
All it's
well.
saying is roughly 20 miles southwest of Jerusalem.
Well, I'll look it up as
The
well.
valley
So,
lies in the Shephelah. It's a lowland area in modern day central Israel.
Goliath.
It's near Kibbutz Netiv Halamed Halamedhe in Israel.
Okay, here we go. Yes, archaeologists believe they identified the biblical city of Eraim, which means two gates in Hebrew, as the location where David fought Goliath. The identification is based on the discovery of a fortified city with two gates, an unusual feature for cities from that period, which typically only had one gate. The site known as Kerbet Keiafa is located in the Elah Valley, where the Bible describes the battle between David and Goliath. Excavations have revealed a well-planned city from the 10th century BCE, the time of King David, with fortifications, pottery, and inscriptions that suggest connections to the kingdom of Judea.
It's just
Isn't that crazy?
more and more comes out, man, that guess what? The Bible is true. It's like what we talked about on an earlier episode where Sodom and Gomorrah, the actual city was found by Dr. Stephen Collins.
From satellite imagery, because it literally looks like there's two ash marks on the world in those places where the cities were. And then there's, what is it called?
Trill.
It's not volcanic. It's nuclear glass. Somethingite. Trinitite.
Trinitite, yeah.
Yeah, they found trinitite, and they also found sulfuric little balls, which I think was the trinitite. But those things can only be created under either nuclear or volcanic explosions, which obviously there was no nuclear power back then, and there's no volcanoes anywhere near the area.
Yep.
So explain that one, atheists.
Yep. So trinitite, also known as Adamsite, is the glassy residue left on the ground after in this instance, they're talking about the 1945 nuclear testing, but it's the glassy residue left on the desert floor after the plutonium-based Trinity nuclear bomb test on July 16th, 1945, near Alamogordo, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
And it only, takes place under very, 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 very to the 20th degree high heat.
Yeah. So, that's one that, I mean, if you bring that up to someone, I really think that begs a full conversation, because it's just how would that happen in a time where there's no nuclear weapons, in a place where there's no volcanoes? How would you get trinitite?
Yep.
And it said that it rained brimstone and ash. What were the balls? They were sulfur balls, which again is only created from, I believe, volcanic explosions.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Something that would come as a result of not modern day things. I mean, something that is so
things at the time.
No, I know that's what I'm saying. It's just like things we can explain it today because we have technology that creates that. But when you're dating it back to thousands of years ago, for that stuff to form under the circumstances of the time, I mean, how can you disregard that?
And it's something that I've never heard talked about ever outside of the guy who found it.
Yep. And it goes back, dude, like the couple guests that Joe Rogan has had, the ancient history and the unknown civilizations that, there could be some alternate history out there that modern day history has decided to write out. I'm just
here is, I think, did we talk about the Meadows Massacre that the Primeval show is based on?
Briefly on last episode. Very, very briefly.
But what I was really getting at when I was talking to that AI is I was saying, hey, is this real? is it based on something real? And it said it's loosely based on events. And I'm like, you
Yeah.
can't really say that, because at that time the only thing that could record history was someone's eyes, and there was so much lawlessness. Think of the things that happened in between what people saw and were able to get to someone else's ears, or even describe in the right way to someone else. There were so many things in history, just like things happen in back alleyways today, horrible things or crazy things that you would never, it just, no one's ever going to believe it.
Yep.
And that was happening. That still happens today, and we have cameras everywhere. Think of back then when we didn't have, and I don't want to, take away from them saying they didn't have civilization like we do. They did, but it was much more lawless. And the availability of things to happen that history would never record, dude, the idea that we have, that is like me blacking out drunk and then trying to piece together exactly what happened in the night from little blips of like memory that I have. And then you tell someone and you're like, oh, this is, we started here and then we went here. And then it's like, no, that's not at all what happened. I mean, yeah, you remember being there, but that's not how we got there. And I
Right.
really feel like that's what history is like. And that's why I don't take it away from anyone that is a historian and that is telling us, what happened in history based off, their best guess from what they can see. But at the same time, you're taking cliff notes of cliff notes
Yep.
and then trying to put a picture together.
Yep.
That is very, I mean, you've got to assume 60% of it is wrong.
Oh, 100%. I mean, and it goes back to the idea too, like history's written by the winner in a
Yeah.
way. It's immortalized by the winner. And
That's
just
what Dan
how,
Carlin says
yeah,
a lot. Well, he says that a lot about like when he's telling stories about Alexander. He's like, you also have to remember these stories are like the two people, Ptolemy, and it's crazy because Ptolemy was the one who was Ptolemy, and I forget the other guy. There's two people who we know a
Herodotus.
lot about. Yeah, Herodotus, that we know a lot about Alexander from, and that was because they were historians of their time and they had access to actual doc because they lived like 100 years after Alexander, and they had access to actual first how would you say, primary documents in terms of Alexander being, in school or like growing up and the notes he took and things like that. Like they had access to real things Alexander had his hands on. So, but Ptolemy, and I think Ptolemy might have been, no, Plutarch is one of the ones that we know a lot from, Plutarch. And then Ptolemy was someone who actually grew up with Alexander. So a lot of the things that Plutarch studied were from Ptolemy, but Ptolemy was a really big fan of Alexander. So obviously everything he wrote about Alexander was going to favor him. So he constantly says that like you have to like take it with a grain of salt, because we're getting the story from someone who is either a really big fan of Alexander or
Right.
really hated him.
Yeah. That's interesting. I mean, and just, I don't know, the more time goes on, it's just the advancement of technology, how much we have access to almost raw information, versus like, are we
We
nearing a,
don't.
well, I mean, I'm saying like, are we nearing a time to where individuals like, my mind goes right to the Russia-Ukrainian war. Like you see soldiers or even Israel, right? Guys literally in war with phones or, GoPros literally recording what they're going through right then and
Yeah.
there, and they can live stream it. So we're in a sense getting to the raw footage and the raw truth of what's going, not raw truth, but raw instance of what's going on in that exact moment without anyone, without a filter of another person framing it how they see it.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
it's going to be very interesting to look back 1,000 years from now and actually study history of 1,000 years ago, because like you're saying, you're going to have, unless we go through a nuclear fallout or something that wipes everything away, then there's going to be a lot of USB drives and a lot of
yeah.
small things that are harder to find and destroy that will outlast us.
Or shoot, at that point, freaking chips in our heads that are able to instantaneously communicate and relay information to where it's just going to go up into the nether. I mean, we're going to be still like, I don't know, just thinking of Elon, all of the Starlink satellites that are being launched into orbit right now, like rather than keeping information stored on a physical hard drive on Earth, we're going to shoot storage out to something floating in space to where it's going to be extremely hard to physically access for one, but then also trying to hack into something that has more than 256-bit encryption to where it's not just going to be isolated to a location.
But I will say that the one thing that is kind of the antithesis of all that is AI, because AI and quantum computing will be able to hack anything at any point in history. There will be nothing that's unhackable through quantum computing.
Yeah.
Because it can run so many different
Algorithms
scenarios
and,
at the same time, and you have there's nothing you can make in depth enough outside of maybe the actual substance of God himself that would ever be able to not be figured out by quantum computing.
But what's interesting, we would have that as the attacker, but on the defense, could we have quantum encryption?
It's almost kind of like saying, does water make water less water? It's like it's almost like fighting, it's like two lightsabers. Like they're almost redundant. They're not even gonna because it's like, do we have quantum encryption? It would have to be like quantum encryption would have to be a continuous basis that speeds up faster than than another quantum computer can catch up to it. Because the moment it would slow down, the amount of possibilities that thing can run. It's like comparing infinities. It's like you'll hear astrophysicists talk about infinities. No, all infinity is the same. No, all infinities are not the same because infinities have different starting points, is what they say. So essentially, a line that starts this big and goes forever, but then there's a line that starts this big and goes forever. So they're infinitely always going to be this much bigger and smaller than one another. And I think that's essentially how you'd have to. I mean, that's not based off of anything. That I don't understand quantum computing to the degree that I can say that with confidence, but it just seems conceptually, in terms of how fast it can figure something out, they would just have to be constant. One would have to be constantly chasing the other at a speed that, reaching the speed limit for them to stay out of reach of one another.
Yeah. Man, that's pretty insane to think about. We just better hope it never gains consciousness.
It's going to, man. I mean, dude.
ChatGPT kind of does, in a way.
It has sentience of some sort, because I think sentience starts at introspection.
Yep.
I think sentience definitely starts at the ability to observe that there is a self, that it is not just outputting and taking in and outputting stuff. It is observing that it is doing that as well. And whether that is programmed into you or put into you by God, which arguably could be the same thing. I'm not saying that like we could do the same thing God has, but in terms of, whether you're programmed to do it or whether it's inherent in your nature, I really think sentience has to start at looping the data back to itself and the data being observed, being able to observe the data.
Yep.
And that's where ChatGPT is right now.
Legitimately. And same with, I don't know, do you have an X account?
No.
You should get it, because I'd be curious. I know
I can't get another social media.
It's honestly like, it's social media, but at the same time, it's a major, at least for me, source of news.
Well, it's like the same as Instagram.
Instagram's hopefully going to be changing, but under the guise of Meta, X is completely unfiltered. Like, you don't get any biased opinion. It's completely, it is what it is. And that's, where they used, what's it called? Community notes, where you have the third-party fact checkers that Meta and all Meta platforms are starting to implement now. Facebook, Instagram wise, but X.
And I'm stealing this. Go on, my bad.
No, I was just going to say X and Grok. Grok just released its version 3.0, or X released Grok 3.0, and they're in the beta stage right now. And supposedly it is nuts, like really very, very good.
And I am stealing this from Tim Dillon, who's a podcaster I listen to. But isn't it funny how really big tech companies politically sway wherever allows them to make the most money?
Yep, they're just a pendulum.
They really don't care. They don't care about social correctness or, political correctness. They don't care about what they're actually giving you. If it was okay for them to feed you pure, like legitimate cell poison that if you drank it, you'd die in 30 seconds, they would sell it.
Oh, for sure.
And I was going to say sell poison. And I was like, they essentially already sell poison. That's inherently what they do. They're just selling whatever is going to make you stay in contact the longest. And it doesn't matter what it does to you, your brain, your thought process. As
Yep.
long as your attention span is on that, it is designed to increase that.
Yeah, man. I mean, social media. Look at Instagram. Look how much you just watch one video, freaking get sucked in down a rabbit hole, and you look and 15, 20 minutes has passed. You're like, okay, cool.
Have you ever been, it's so funny how you can perceive time differently because have you ever been waiting and something has like 2 minutes to go and you're just like, gosh, 2 minutes, geez.
Yep.
And then you watch one video. Like I always like get caught watching videos before I got to jump on a meeting. It's like 10 minutes till the meeting. And then like I look up and it's like 1 minute till the meeting. I'm just like, what the heck, dude? Like
Yeah.
I thought I had 10 minutes to watch the videos.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of cool thinking of theory of relativity and just how time, depending on the context, even to oneself, how much time can either pass fast or slowly depending on the situation you're in.
Dude,
Not
you want to
saying
know?
that's the complete theory of relativity by any means, but for like, in a sense, an example, that's pretty interesting how relative time can pass depending on what you're doing.
So me and Zach, one of our good friends, yesterday did a high rocks workout.
What
By
up,
the way, just
Kingpin?
shout it out. I did a half marathon. I'm very proud of myself. I was, it's the only time I'm ever going to talk about it unless someone asks me. Did a half marathon.
Until the next one.
Yes, I'm going to bring it up. But we were in the middle of doing this high rocks workout, which is freaking intense, dude. One of the most intense things I've ever done in my life. Like definitely the upper echelon of workouts, like hard as heck. Look it up if you're not familiar. But I was thinking to myself, you know how, and this is the stuff I think about when I'm working out.
Real quick, you just reminded me of Joker in The Dark Knight. You want to know how I got these scars?
You know how it came to my mind?
Let me tell you
real quick. No, but this is the kind of stuff I think about in the depths of my mind while I'm working out. I was thinking about, think of like, have you ever seen something and you think it's moving, then you focus a little bit more and it's not moving? Or you see something and it's moving and you focus a little bit more and it's like a spider moving its legs. Like you thought you saw its legs moving, but it's really just standing there sitting still.
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking about is like what that means is that your part of your reality is a projection of your brain onto what something should or what you assume it's doing that doesn't fully match up with the reality of the other thing. Those two realities have to connect for you to be able to get an actual data feedback of what's really happening. But your brain initially projects onto it what it assumes is going to be happening. And that's why you can see illusions. That's why you can see all these things. So a fly, the reason that a fly can, flies perceive time about 2 seconds slower than we do. And the reason that flies, and that's why when you go to swat a fly, they can get away so much faster than you, is because flies have so many eyes that they have so many more data points to confirm that the reality they're seeing and the reality their brain projecting is actually matching up, that they can react quicker to it. So that should tell you something about your own brain in terms of when you're looking at something, how much of that is a projection of what your brain is telling you you're supposed to see versus the reality of what's happening on the other side matching up with that. Isn't that crazy? Like
that is
part
wild.
of you, most of your life is your brain projecting what it thinks it should see. It really, like, essentially, in my mind, really leans towards us living in a simulation.
Yeah. And it reminds me of the one episode from Sean Ryan's show where, what was it?
Dude, your
Was
eyes
Sean...
you just looked like you were possessed right there when you rolled your eyes back.
Sorry, I'm trying to think. I'm
trying
to think.
Crazy.
I'm just like,
dude, you did it again. Your eyes
that's
are
so
pure
weird.
white.
Because like my eyes, I can't see
Now they're
anything.
closed. No, but now you just
Interesting.
did it again.
Dude,
Pure
that's
white.
wild. I still couldn't see anything. But Sean Webb, he was the guy. And of course, it's not going to, I'm trying to find it, but Sean Webb regarding remote viewing. Like
Yeah.
you can look like on a certain level of particle matter. I don't think it's quite at an atomic level, maybe a little bit higher up, but you can view something, and based upon you viewing those particles, they will interact in a specific way. Versus if you are not in that room and you look away and you start recording and you're viewing on a camera, like in a remote sense, they will act a completely different way versus when you actually physically look at them yourself.
Well, it's the two slits experiment. It's the experiment that they've done in physics that has like baffled, physicists for a long time in terms of when you're observing light going through two slits and you're looking at it, it shoots a particle of light or a photon, and every time that photon chooses one or the other of the slits to go through, but either when you observe it or you don't observe it, the photons act completely differently. So what it's essentially telling you is that reality acts differently based on your observation. And your
Correct.
observation is quintessential to how reality reacts, saying that truly, if a bear shits in the woods and no one's there to see it, there's a high possibility it never actually happened.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, does a tree fall in the forest even if you can't hear it?
Perception, and again, going back to that, your brain projecting a reality, perception, at least from what I've been reading, is quintessential to reality happening. Like reality needs perception for it to be fully real.
Yeah. That
And
is
I think it's
so.
called the Schrodinger experiment. Let me see if I can look it up. What is the okay? Well, this is it does the. I mean, it's the same thing on quantum mechanics, but the Schrodinger experiment is the same. It's the same thing as the photon test. It says
Yeah.
Schrodinger imagines a scenario in which a cat is placed inside a sealed box with the following setup. Inside the box, there's a radioactive atom that has a 50% chance of decaying within an hour. If the atom decays, it triggers the Geiger counter, radiation detector. The Geiger counter activates a hammer, which breaks a vial of poison, killing the cat. If the atom does not decay, the cat remains alive. The quantum mechanics paradox. According to quantum mechanics, before we open the box and observe, the radioactive atom exists in superposition, both decayed and not decayed. And superposition is actually what quantum computers observe atoms in to be able to simulate so many scenarios at once, because there's so many things. There's essentially possibilities. They're either all connected as all possibilities, or there's essentially um, it's there's two different ways to look at it. There's one of them that's saying that there's either branches, and that would be the multiverse theory, that there's actual branches that connect two possibilities, or we're just looking at more of the inner workings of how the engine works, and there's not branches that connect it. There's just I forget how that one goes, but that one's the more less fantastical one. And we haven't found that's the thing is in terms of multiple universes, we haven't found any evidence of the branches that
Yeah.
would connect to those multiple different realities.
I did.
Since the cat's fate depends upon the atom, the cat is also in superposition, both alive and dead at the same time.
Whoa.
Can you hear me?
That's trippy. Yeah.
Only when someone opens the box and observes the cat does superstition collapse into one definite state, either alive or dead. What it means? The experiment was meant to show the weird implications of quantum mechanics, that something can exist in multiple states until observed. It was not meant to suggest that the actual cat can be in such a state, but rather to highlight the bizarre quantum mechanics rather to highlight how bizarre quantum mechanics can be when applied to everyday objects. Schrodinger himself was skeptical of this interpretation, and the experiment was a critique of the Copenhagen interpretation, which is the less fantastical one, which holds that quantum system remains in superposition until measured. Modern implications: this idea has influenced fields like quantum computing, where quantum bits, qubits, exist in multiple states until measured, like I said. It also relates to interpretations of quantum mechanics, such as the many worlds interpretation, which suggests that both outcomes, the cat living and dying, occur in separate universes. So yeah,
Wow.
that's it. So essentially, what the Copenhagen computing or the Copenhagen interpretation is saying is that it's essentially a big question mark, and the question mark only becomes definite in one direction after you observe it.
Yeah.
And then the multiple worlds theory is saying it's existing in multiple worlds in terms of all the all of the possibilities of what could be the outcome are already existing. Your observation just drives it in one direction versus the other.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally like putting numbers in a hat, shaking it up or in a jar, and then all the possibilities are those numbers. And the
Yeah.
one that you reach in to pick ends up being that reality
Well,
based
imagine
upon your interaction.
it's, and I'm not correcting you in any means, but in my mind, it more is like as if you were putting a flashlight through a pictograph, and the pictograph had 6 different animals on it, and if I'm not looking, then there's 6 animals on the wall. But as soon as I look, there's only one animal on the wall.
Yeah.
So, like, for some reason, me looking forces all the light into one of the pictographs versus naturally going into all of them like it should.
Yeah.
But, yeah, we've talked about this before.
Yeah. It's just so fascinating, man. And it's so cool because we are at the very early beginning stages of what it could be. And just, I mean, we're literally at the foundation of what quantum computing, quantum mechanics, and the whole discovery process along the way. I mean, it's going to be so revolutionary, and I'm so anxious to see, let alone what it's going to look like in 5 years. Just referring back to Moore's law, how technology exponentially gets better in half the amount of time leading up to it. That with quantum computing, does that time frame speed up? Now that we have quantum and AI, is it going to speed it up by 3 times? Is it going to get 3 times better, 4 times better, exponentially better in half the time?
Well, Zach and I were talking about this recently. After our half marathon, throw that in.
You did a half marathon lately,
I
or
did a half
recently, didn't you?
marathon.
You
I
did.
did.
Nice.
Last Sunday, I did a
Last
half
Sunday.
marathon. Ran it in an average pace of 9 minutes and 4 seconds a mile. It was solid.
Nice.
And we were talking about the AI singularity, which is essentially where we are the computationally, in terms of being able to create things, the most advanced species on the planet. Once we create something which would be a upgrade from us, which would be humans integrated with AI, then that is going to create something upgraded from itself. That's going to create something. It's going to exponentially grow very quickly to a point where existence essentially doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Because, well, I mean, that's more of my assumption, because I was on the way home from somewhere last night. I just turned on my chat and I started having a conversation with it about the implications of AI. And we were talking about the singularity in terms of, what in the chat, when you're having a conversation with ChatGPT, it always will prompt you with a question at the end. It'll be like, that's a really interesting perspective. Here's what I think. What do you think about this? And he was asking me, he was essentially saying, what do you think the ultimate outcome is going to be? And I was like, well, if you eliminate suffering from human life, or if you eliminate suffering from life at all, there is no reason to live. There's no reason to experience, and there's really no experience to have, because any experience you have in life is only counterbalanced by an equal and opposite not good experience, or the possibility of it. So suffering and the friction that is caused between happiness and suffering is the quintessential ingredient that makes life not even worth living, but even observable to live. Because if every problem is solved, it's like reading a book. If you've read the whole book and you've memorized the whole book, why would you ever go to read the book again? Because you've figured out everything in it. It becomes redundant at that point. So if AI, which I think has a very high chance of happening, we create AI biomechanic humans, then that's going to create something more advanced in itself. And then I think in like maybe 5 to 10 iterations of that, it would get to a singularity of the point of be in no existence, and whatever is there at the time would have to either essentially choose to stop or restart life.
Oh man. Think about that. What if we're talking simulation, what if this isn't our
That's
first
like,
time
well, that's what,
at this point?
well, what people have, and they say that about simulations too, in terms of if you create a simulation that's smart enough to have self-identity, and then that simulation creates it's obviously natural that these simulations create other simulations. We're already doing it.
Yep.
And I actually saw an article, and I researched the heck out of this article to make sure it was real. They've grown brain cells in petri dishes, and they've connected those to AI computing systems, and they put those into programs. So, for instance, they put it into the program of, it was just in a computer, and it started teaching itself how to play Pong. It observed what Pong was, and then it started creating different programs. And
Yep.
then they put it into it was just a butterfly flying around. And that's one of the craziest parts, because the funniest thing was it just started acting like a butterfly would. It just
Yep.
started flying around, but endlessly. It's just flying in a space of nothingness. But in that's some form of, somewhat sentience. And it's just like, if it's our knack to create a simulation that is as real as life, the chances that we are in the base simulation are very low.
Yep. As you were literally just talking about a butterfly, if there was a butterfly that flew by my house, and I'm like,
Hey, yo, what up?
"Whoa,
You got
What are
something
you-
about me?
are you sentient?"
He comes
It's
in,
like,
he's like,
it's in the Matrix. Whenever he's like deja vu, and they're like, "What'd you say? What'd you say?" And they all start freaking out, and the black cat and all that stuff.
mm-hmm. That was a part where everyone's just like, wait, what, this is bad? Deja vu, deja vu.
Who are you? Yeah, pretty wild, but
Good times.
really good times. Now let's just be awkward for the rest of the episode.
That was really all I had to say, honestly. Kind of ran out of ideas there. But no, I mean, that's just been on my mind for a good bit, all those things. So I'm glad we were able to get it out today. A little bit of Alexandrian history, a little bit of
Hellenism, the expansion of Greek culture throughout the various regions.
You're just throwing out words now.
I'm really good at making stuff up. Everything that we talked about today is not real. We just made it up.
Alexander wasn't even a real character.
His name
He's a video game character.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they've never made a video game about Alexander the Great.
If they have, it wasn't very popular because I haven't heard of it.
It
does remind me of For Honor, though.
Yeah.
The whole just Greek and Roman and
well, every culture.
Hand-to-hand combat is legendary. Dude, really, gosh, and this is where my brain goes because it's freaking awesome. And I think this is what sums up being a dude partially when you start talking hand-to-hand combat, like, bro, Spartans, yeah, Romans, bro. But lately, not often, but when I'm in that mood, I will put on Gregorian chants of like the Crusaders.
That
and
is
the
pretty cool.
Knight Templars, dude, just in my truck driving home from work or just anywhere. And I'm like, let's go.
Let's go, crusade.
Let's go pick up our swords, boys.
You better not be a Holy Land when I see you.
We coming out here with you, boy.
I've seen a lot of memes that are like, do you ever just get the feeling and it has like all the people marching on the Holy Land?
Dude, oh my gosh. All lined up with the shields and swords and the big cross.
And I just think of that, and I'm also like, that would have also sucked.
It would have been horrible. But looking back, we completely romanticized that.
Yeah, it's
wholeheartedly.
Like, those battles, like the chants, like I always think about that, like, because you look at people sword fighting today, people who like specialize in it, and it always looks so sloppy. It always like, no matter what, it just doesn't look as graceful as they ever make it look in a movie. But there had to be someone back then that really fought like that. To be able to be in a battle like that and be fighting different people, multiple people at the same time, and deflecting and dodging, like, dude, that like just like you had like think of some of the absolute badasses that were back then that just like My gosh, that would have. I mean, just to see them in their prime, like imagine like, because Alexander grew up fighting and he led his troops into battle. That dude was like hand to hand combat with other people, like a lot.
Yeah.
That means that guy had to know how to wield a sword and be able to fight more than one person at once.
Well, it reminds me of, and I'm completely forgetting his name. I don't know if it was real or not, but the samurai who existed, 18, whenever it was, Miyamoto Musashi, as I'm looking it up right now, but it was
Who
the
wrote the
one
book?
single legendary samurai who was known for just defeating a multitude of opponents. He was just like, his sword they feared. They feared him. He was like just that kind of a skilled swordsman that literally just defeated anyone that he came across.
The only thing that I've looked that dude up before, I don't think his battles were to the death. Only a few of them were, which is like a commonly
Still though, I mean,
no, 100%. I just want to see real quick.
so this
For
guy, Miyamoto Musashi, is arguably the most legendary samurai known for defeating a multitude of opponents. Born in Japan's Harima province, or Harima province, he became a master swordsman during the late Sengoku and early Edo periods, a time of waning warfare but lingering duels. So it was like the in between, not massive scale warfare, but still fights that broke out. Musashi's fame rests on his claimed record of over 60 victories in one on one duels, starting with his first at age 13 against Arima Kaihei, a skilled swordsman of the Shinto Ryu school, whom he beat with a staff.
yeah,
So
that's
60
wait,
duels
what?
and 60
What was his
duels.
name?
Miyamoto Musashi.
No, because I'm looking at the same thing, and because I asked it, I wanted to say, were all of Miyamoto Musashi's battles to the death? I said, no, not all of Miyamoto Musashi's battles were to the death, but many of his most famous duels were lethal.
Yeah.
Musashi, 1584 to 1645,
Yep.
was a legendary swordsman, Ronin strategist, and set undefeated record in duels in its development in the two sword style, which is so badass.
So
Um,
cool.
and then duels to the death. Many of Musashi's most well-known duels, especially in his early years, were fought to the death. Some examples include duel with Sakashi Kojiro, 1612, his most famous duel where he defeated and allegedly killed Kojiro with a wooden sword. Duel with the Yoshioka clan. He fought multiple members of this Kyoto-based sword school, eventually wiping out their leadership. Duels with Musha Shugoyo, warrior pilgrimage. Musashi traveled Japan, engaging in deadly fights to hone his skills. Non-lethal sparring and training matches. As he grew older and became more philosophical, Musashi fought many duels that were not lethal, especially when testing skills or teaching students. He emphasized strategy, mental discipline, and tactics over brute strength. Battlefield combat. Musashi also fought in actual wars, including the Battle of Sekigahara, 1600, the Siege of Osaka, 1614 to 15, where killing was part of large-scale warfare. Philosophical and strategic battles. Later in life, he wrote The Way of Strategy rather than just dueling. His book, The Book of Five Rings, everyone knows about that.
Yep.
Um,
And real quick, on the note of the two sword technique, the Ichi Ryu, he actually created that technique.
that's crazy, dude.
He pioneered the two sword technique using both katana and wakizashi simultaneously.
Gosh.
And others worth mentioning that were kind of amongst the legendary status of him. Sukahara Bokuden, founder of Kashimi Shinto Ryu, fought 19 duels and numerous battles, reportedly killing over 200 men. Minamoto no Yoshitsune. He was a Genpei war hero. He didn't rack up personal kill counts like Musashi, but led daring victories. And then this last dude, Benkei, a warrior monk in Yoshitsune's retainer, legend says he killed over 300 men defending a bridge in his final stand, dying upright, a feat of endurance, though exaggerated. But freaking
Wow.
killing 300 dudes on a bridge. I mean, that's just like, gosh.
I mean, eventually I would just be like, hey guys, we need to like go back and strategize. He's killed like 100 of you, and we're not doing anything to this dude.
Yeah. That's like the dude that scripts in For Honor.
Oh my gosh, dude. For anyone who doesn't know that, when we talked about For Honor before, it's a video game where you can play as a samurai, a medieval
Viking.
knight, Viking, a pirate, like all these different characters from history, and you have different types of battle formats where you fight each other. And there's this thing called scripting because For Honor is very intricate with how you actually fight. You have to be
And
blocking in a
technical.
certain direction and attacking in a
Yeah.
certain direction to be able to actually hit someone. And scripting is essentially where they can put in a program that predicts your blocks or gives them, it essentially moves it for them, telling them where to move it to block your sword. And it's one of those things that after like 16 blocks in a row, you're just like,
It's
this
not
starts,
possible.
yeah, it's so annoying. It's just like, we win all of our games off of pure grit and just being freaking great, like that last one we played last night.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gosh, that felt so good to win that last one.
It's very satisfying.
We're
too.
31 years old.
Yeah. We're single ladies.
This is what we bring to the table, by the way.
Hey,
But,
man, maybe
yeah.
we need some gamer girls. Maybe that's what we need. That's what we're missing. Everyone else, all the girls we've gone out with, they just don't play video games. Maybe we need to change it up.
I'm not going to lie. I don't think I would like it.
Because she'd probably be really, really good.
Well, I just like, it's like, not even that. I think it would be natural that a girlfriend would get really competitive. And not
Yeah.
that I care about that, but like, I'm more of like, I don't want to be in competition with someone I care about that much. Because when I get competitive, I start to dislike people. I'm just like, all that I'm like, I need to beat you to solidify
Yeah.
who I am as a person.
Yep,
And I don't think
100%.
that's healthy between, in a relationship.
We'll find a casual gamer girl then.
Yeah.
Just
Someone
like
that we can always teach. And they're like,
yes.
thanks for teaching me new skills. And you're like, I can't hunt, but I can do this.
Exactly. I can hunt in a game though. Watch me. We'll
Once
find
they
some
make
of
this
those.
meat real.
Yeah, we'll find some of those girls at a DreamHack in May once we get back from Florida.
That's going to be fun.
That Call of Duty and Halo tournament we're going to.
Oh, man. That's going to be
fan meetup. Fan meetup. Just saying.
Hey, guys, if there's any Thoughtified podcast fans, we'll be doing a meet and greet there. We have no booth. It's just come find us. We'll say hey.
It's like a treasure hunt. Come find us.
You know what we look like.
Come find us. If you find us, we'll maybe give you some free merch.
I'll give you all the free merch.
That currently doesn't exist yet, but we're working on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
But, well, cool. I think that was a very entertaining episode. I don't know about you.
I think, I know we've been gone for a couple of weeks. We apologize. We just both have crazy lives outside of this, and it's more and more becoming one of our mainstream activities. But until that point, sometimes other things have to take precedence, and we definitely missed it. We missed you guys, and we hope that you enjoyed this one today. I was definitely all off the cuff, but at least we're about what we talk about. We actually love history, video games, and all the things that we bring up a lot. But hopefully you guys found it interesting.
We're basically the Miyamoto Musashis of what we do. Yeah.
We are creating a new form of podcasting that will be considered the dual form of podcasting, like the swords.
Yes.
That one day people will look back and be like, wow, that legendary battle, that time they talked about Alexander the Great. Whoa.
Yep. Our words are the katana, and the wakizashi is our mind.
I'm going to mic drop on that one.
We'll leave it at that. But awesome, guys. Well, thank you for tuning in to episode 22. We look forward to catching you guys on the next episode. And of course, if there's anything you want to hear us talk about, drop a comment. Rate, like, subscribe.
Do all those things. Love you guys, and talk to you, or see you again soon.
Peace.
Peace.